Hey guys, this is Chris from RunninGun. Today I want to go over stance. Now the one thing you're going to have to think about before you're actually putting your hands on the gun is stance. How you're standing and how your body's going to react to shooting in that standing position. So when discussing stance, a lot of people will try to start from the ground up and say put your feet here, put your knees here, put your waist here, put your shoulders here. There's a lot of methodology out there on how to teach people how to stand while they're shooting. So I got one of my students to stand up in one of my classes and I was explaining how to stand when firing. She didn't know anything about it. She had never shot a gun. But the first thing I told her was approach me and getting a fighting stance. And this is a woman who hasn't had any experience in combatives or shooting for that matter. And the first thing that she did was she looked at me in the eyes and she went like this. So let's think about that for a second. When the body's in this position, why do people go into this position when they're getting ready to fight? Well, it's pretty basic biomechanics and efficiency in where your body is and what you're preparing to do. So, immediately getting in that position, what did she do? She put the weight of her body in the balls of her feet, in the portion of the foot right here that's easiest to move and maneuver when you're getting ready to be in a position or a dynamic situation. The next thing she did was put her knees slightly bent. What does that do? That gives you the mobility to move around left, right, forward, or backwards, depending on the situation, depending on the assailant, location, what have you. The waist, where the hips move. That would be the only thing I would say is slightly different in shooting versus fighting, and that's going to be the position of the hips is going to be kind of the assessment situation of what you want to look at while you're shooting. There's a lot of methodologies about square shooting, having forward direction on your enemy versus having a bladed stance to minimize your size in the assailant's eyes and target's view. Generally in shooting you want to point the hips where you're shooting, so it'll be driving out and it'll also help you with target dissemination as far as where you're shooting. Now another thing is shoulder placement. That's going to be more directed by your shooting style, your grip style, but generally speaking you want to have your shoulders basically square towards your target, but depending on how bladed of a stance you're shooting with, that will dictate where your shoulders are. Just to let you know, firearm is unloaded. If you're squaring up, that will dictate that your shoulders are more square. If you have a more bladed style stance, then that's going to dictate where your shoulders are in relation to the firearm. Having that grip and putting your body in that frame gives you a good basis as to where you want to go when you're preparing for shooting. Now a couple other things I want to go over is when you bring that firearm up in that shooting position, you want to let the firearm come to your eyes. You don't want to bring the head to the gun. Now why is that important? It's biomechanical efficiency. So when you think about how the head feels, how the neck feels, putting that neck in tension, adding tension to the body makes for a less stable shooting frame. So when you bring that head, you eliminate your ability to maneuver the head and limiting your field of view and limiting your ability to find things in your range of motion and your field of view of your neck. The other thing is where you're leaning. The way I try to explain it to my students is this firearm is only going to recoil so much. It may weigh 1.5 pounds, it may weigh a pound, whatever it is. It will never overpower your body, the human body. So what's the best way to mitigate that recoil? You can stand absolutely square and shoot and try to grip it to where you're going to have to mitigate every bit of recoil with your arms, and it takes a lot more upper body strength. Now, what if you took your 165, 170 pound frame, like I am, and I just applied a little bit of my body weight into it? Well, what that does is that recoil is going to be mitigated because I have the weight of my body essentially leaning on the weight of that gun and the recoil of that gun. It won't recoil much at all. So having the weight in the balls of your feet for mobility, the bend in your knees for ease of movement, the hips pointed where the gun's going, the shoulders slightly off center from square, and the head natural with a slight lean forward. That will give you a positive frame for shooting and recoil mitigation, and that will also keep the body easily mobile to move from left to right, side to side, however you have to move in that dynamic situation. Because let's face it, if you're getting shot at, odds are you're not going to be standing in one place. And one thing I did want to point out, on the side of what I was saying, you'll see a lot of people naturally put their bodies in a form to where they have a rearward lean. People don't get in football tackling positions and lean rearward, and that's because their center of gravity is being changed with that rearward lean. So if you came and you applied a little bit of pressure here, you'll notice that weight being on the heels of my feet will throw you off balance, essentially throw you off your feet. So just keep that in mind. If you are a weaker shooter and the firearm feels heavy and you're trying to offset that weight, just keep in mind you're more worried about mitigating that recoil, and that can be done with simply applying your body weight forward. So hopefully this video kind of gave you a basis and a foundation, if you will, no pun intended, actually it was intended, on where to start when you're shooting, before your hands even get on the gun. We'll go over grip later, but I just wanted you to start out where you can do this kind of training in your own home. Make sure your firearms are empty and train safely. So there you go, guys. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, leave us any feedback on things you want to see, what we could do to make things better, or what else you want to see on the channel. This is Chris from RunninGun. Thanks for joining us. Get warm!